All right, today I'm joined by Mike from the No Limits Thriller podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's like when you read a book or even when you watch The Terminal List and you want to talk to someone, but you don't really have anyone at that moment. Just jump right onto the Thriller podcast, and it's like you have your friends that follow along the same thought lines, and it's just really awesome. What is the story behind your podcast? How did you get it started?
Yeah. Thanks, TV, first for having me on. My co host Chris was going to join us, but he had to drop out at the last minute. And you nailed it perfectly. Thriller Pod is all about that. Two dudes just having a chat, exactly like we would all those years ago in college after movies, TV shows, books. And we realized there's a missing niche. There's no after show for some of our favorite thrillers. We really started with our absolute hands down favorite series, the Mitch Rapp series by Vince Flynn. And we just started talking about those books back. Man, it was early COVID days, just a few months into COVID and having some friends hang out online. I said, "Hey, Chris, you still read those books we used to talk about back in the day?" And we couldn't stop talking about it. I said, "What if we record this? I think other people might be interested in hearing, you know, two friends chatting about some of their favorite thrillers." And 5 years later, and probably we're over 300 episodes, so we probably covered close to that in number of books, 300-ish books, at least 50 different authors. And so we have a big, kind of umbrella of topics we've covered, but they all come back to this espionage, military, spy thriller genre. So we've done some classics, going back to Le Carre, a bit in the Clancy verse, but we really focus on the more modern day authors like Brad Thor, the late great Vince Flynn, and Kyle Mills, who took over after him. And through that network, talking about books. Obviously, Jack Carr burst onto the scene, and there was no way we were not going to include all the Terminalist books. So when we started our third season, the one we're currently running, the Thriller podcast, it very heavily was reliant on the James Reese books and the Jack Carr universe. Probably our biggest episodes, most downloads, and the books we get most excited to talk about are the James Reese ones.
That's really awesome. Is there a book that you can look back to that really got you into reading?
Well, yeah, like I said, everything in the Mitch Rapp series and the height of the series is with his like 1-2 punch Memorial Day and Consent to Kill. But I can't recommend starting with those because a lot of spoilers, come from the rest of the series because those are a bit later in the series. So I would say Transfer of Power, the first Mitch Rapp book, right out the gates was one of my all-time favorites. So anything in the Mitch Rapp series, but I'll highlight those three: Transfer of Power, Consent to Kill, and Memorial Day.
That's awesome. I've been trying to catch up in the series. I've only read a few of the first ones, and then I kind of took a break, but I'm jumping back into them. I got a few paperbacks just added to the library here recently with term limits, and
Nice.
I'm restarting from the beginning.
Yeah, Term Limits is a crazy book because it was Vince Flynn's first, and he wrote it. It was kind of a moonshot. I think he was working in insurance and other things in the Twin Cities, and he wrote this book, and it's about political assassinations. It's all of a DC book, and Chris is born and raised outside DC, and I've lived in DC for over 15 years now. So just reading some of these thrillers that are just set in a city he and I both know so well, and we can make a lot of connections to the political stuff and inside the Beltway stuff. So anytime we hear details in any thriller and something's happening in DC, he and I, we pick it apart. So we only really gravitate to those authors who get it right, and Jack Carr does that. So to make one more kind of link to Jack Carr, the first time we had him on our podcast, back when we were the Mitch Rapp podcast, our season one, we just talked to him about the influence of Mitch Rapp and this author Vince Flynn on his books, and he talked about having copies of them when he was downrange, when he was deployed, when he was just getting into the SEAL teams, and we really had a great chat about the influence that Vince has had. So I might talk about Vince Flynn and Mitch Rapp a lot. And I know you guys are all Terminalist fans over here, but yeah, he very much has been an inspiration on Jack and his writing style, and it's so clear to see in his characters and his storylines.
But yeah, for sure. And there are only really a few authors out there that were good right out of the gate. And I think that's really how you can tell if someone's going to be a good author or a great author. In reading Brad Thor and Jack Carr and Vince Flynn has
Yeah.
really spoiled me. When there's someone who jumps onto the scene and I read their book, I'm just I'm trying to support them, and it's hard to stay in the story and not be like comparing someone's writing style when they just jumped on.
Yeah.
But they're very, very talented, even right from the beginning.
I mean, just look at the Terminal List as a debut book. We have a lot of thrillers under our belt, and when both Chris and I read that one and got to talk about it, we instantly knew this was a classic. That Jack was doing something different. He had that spark. We call it like that magic spark when you just know you have a character or a story or whatever it is. You know when you have that, when you got the magic sauce. It all comes together, and I feel like the Terminalist, that book holds special significance for me. Even covering, like I said, 300 books on the podcast over the last 5 years and reading many, many more beyond that, just in my personal life and background. Yet I keep coming back to Terminalist as just an absolute classic of the genre. It really did something different and special, particularly that twist. You're not here unless you know what I'm talking about with James Reese and his family. But when that happens, I remember I have told this story on the podcast. I can precisely pinpoint where I was listening to the audiobook, thinking I was going to go for a jog around my old campus down here in DC. And I just sat down on the curb for a few minutes. When I read that scene about Lucy, and I could just picture the lights and sirens, like it felt real and it hurt. The pain
Yeah.
became visceral. And I just remember sitting down and being like, did that happen? And like you could feel that animal rage, that instinct that James had inside of him. And I just remember that translating like almost physically into me, physically and emotionally into me. And to have writing that can do that is so powerful. And that doesn't happen often. Like you said, you pick up a new author, you don't know what to expect. Sure, maybe it's good for a debut book, it's rough around the edges. It's got inklings of a good story that maybe will grow into something great down the road. But man, when Jack Carr came out with Terminalist and it just hit like it did right off the bat, something special.
Yeah, and especially that moment. I remember the first time I was also listening to that, and that's only a few chapters
It's
into his
early.
writing career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's maybe the second or third moment already in that book that really hits hard. Him losing his team, him losing his family. And man, will never forget what it was like the first time.
The lowest of lows. That book takes you to the lowest of lows. I don't know if James will ever experience the highest of highs, but he's gotten kind of close to getting back to a normal life or this whole idea of settling down. But it took what, 7 books, 6, 7 books before he really found the 6, 7, before he found
Yeah.
somebody and is settling down. So I mean, just a series that starts you off with what is the worst thing a human being could be going through, and what happens when an apex predator hits the lowest of lows, and because people are out there suffering, right? And so I think there's a story and a message beyond the characters and beyond this book that I think just is felt by so many people, whether they're veterans, spouses, families of Gold Star families or something. It's just, I think this book had a wider reach than any other thriller I've read, and how many people could identify with a piece of it. And to start there with a character, we often get these larger than life protagonists, whether it's SEALs or someone else, who are going out there kicking, taking names. Like you want to be the James Bond. You're cool, you're classy, you get the ladies, you're the talk of the town. But no, we start with a broken man, lost his friends, felt responsible for them, lost his wife, lost his young child, has nothing left to live for. And we have to stew in that. And I love that it carries over to True Believer. Like a man who is still so broken. Mission accomplished? Sure. He checked off the names on the list. And oh boy, was it fun to do it. But did it get him anywhere? No, he's still on this boat. He's going off to die. He's riding off into the sunset. And then to have to deal with that in True Believer, which I personally really like the first half of. I know a lot of people had issues with, and I wonder how the TV show will handle the Africa stuff and the redemption arc. But I just love that we had to sit with a character for multiple books who is in a place that I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of veterans, a lot of families of veterans can identify with. And again, that's not something, having read a lot of thrillers, not something I could say happens a lot. Usually it's cheap, it's short, the person's right back to being at their best immediately chapters later, or they get the girl chapters later, or there's a happy ending. The consequences of this series, it's dark and it's gritty, but it's also very real and identifiable.
Yeah, it's Very grounded. I think that's why the Terminal List is so hard hitting right out of the gate. And even later on, when James Reese is preventing World War III, there are rockets and missiles falling out of the sky.
Right.
He's still a very relatable and grounded character. The journey that Jack Carr took James Reese on was very true to the character and very well thought out, because I think a lot of people would be tempted to just jump straight into the craziest story you can come up with. But you have to build this relationship as an author with your character and build it so that your readers want to follow this character on this journey.
Yeah, no, you said the building of relationships and the story arc. I agree. And having read not only a lot of books, but a lot of series, because one thing we like to do on our podcast is if we're going to start a new author, we go to their debut book, and then we might not finish the whole series, but we try to do at least the first two or three, and then maybe we'll jump around if there's a book we really want to do later in series. But we like to go back to the author's start. And we've seen a second book slump quite a bit in a lot of series. So when those authors have that spark in the first book, I wonder if the second book, you might still have that energy, but it just becomes almost a labor. You know, it almost becomes that the publisher has the deadline, especially if your first one was so successful. They want to put you on the book a year plan. And we realize sometimes the book a year plan doesn't work for some. And then we just covered recently Dan Brown. We're two Dan Brown books in. We want to keep going to cover all of them. He was 8 years apart between his last two books. And so we've seen everything. And Jack, just the person he is, seems to be on the side of the go-getter. Do more than what any normal human can handle in their daily life and schedule. You know, husband, father, SEAL veteran, all this, and author and entrepreneur and podcaster and all the business endeavors. Yet this dude can crack out at least a book a year. And now with his targeted series, with some other collaborations he's going into, at least a book a year. Dan Brown was 8 years apart in his most recent books. So it's just everybody's got these different flows, right? These different creative energies and how they put them to use. But the one thing that shines through, whether you do it one way, you do it another way, is you have to have the characters go on an arc. It can't be, or the series that fall a little flat for us in our reviews are the adventure of the year. Like you said, ripped from the headlines. Something happened in Ukraine. I'm going to write the Ukraine book this year. There's a bioweapon. I'm going to write the bioweapon book this year. And their characters just kind of like plugged in to just stop. You know, save us from thermonuclear war. And then next year, save us from, you know, let's do Iran this year. And let's just pick a different actor every year. But there's not that continuous thread. And I think one thing Jack has done real well, which again echoes what we love with Mitch Rapp and Vince Flynn's work, is every book progresses the character and the people around that character. It's about team, it's about family, it's about brotherhood, and you have to move forward in those relationships. And I think you can easily say one of the best things about a James Reese book is the people around him. It's not only him, but it's his closest friends, it's the people he's downrange with. And I mean, just look at Cry Havoc, right? One of the most fun things about Cry Havoc is a couple of these new characters we never even knew about before, but they were so central in Tom Reese's life. And ergo, they were so important in shaping who James Reese is. So I think that's what Jack can do. Have that arc that continues long term beyond a 2-3 book arc, because a lot of authors also have like a trilogy in mind. Once that trilogy's done, you almost don't, you change the character's name, it wouldn't even matter. They're going and writing a new book. No, don't change the character's name. I want to know about Reese. I want to know about Rafe. I want to know about the Hastings clan. I mean, you're just so invested in these characters and the journey they go on. And you don't just want 1, 2, or 3 books with them. You want their relationship to develop 7, 8 books. And Jack is still continuing to do that.
Yeah, and I've never seen anybody write other characters that aren't the main character. You talked about the Hastings, Tom Reese, all these people that readers are calling for a book centered on that one character. And we finally got it with Cry Havoc. And I'm looking forward to talking to you on your podcast here in a moment. But you really don't find that anywhere else. And those characters are really important in shaping who he is. And they're just as big. And one thing that a lot of people are worried about when we were getting Rafe Hastings in Darkwolf was like, he's almost this perfect character. How are you going to do this and be true to his story on a series? But what did you think seeing some of those iconic characters brought to life on screen?
Yeah, what a great place to start with Tom Hopper. I mean, a lot of people wanted to see Rafe on screen and to get Rafe right. And almost everything I'm hearing is that the audience at large thinks he was one of the best castings, best roles, best handled characters. And it needed to do that in the most recent TV show. Dark Wolf, I mean, we spent hours covering it on our pod, and you even came on to talk with us. And I think I'm just blown away with this production team. And not only the technical components of getting the cinematography right, the choreography, fight choreography, weapons choreography, plotting, pacing. I think all of that is shaping up and it's really good. But I think what makes it amazing is the people behind it, the heart and the soul of it. The one thing I wanted this show to do better than I think the first season was to really, I wanted to get a sense of what it was like when I read the books. And they did that without even having a book to follow. The first season, and maybe because I went in with a critical eye to the Terminalist, was that book meant something to me. I visualized it. We all had our own visual on it. And if it wasn't going to be one to one, it's automatically kind of, I'm thinking about it a notch down. And so every time I was watching it, I couldn't get rid of that critical muse saying, I want this to be just like the book. I want it to be just like what I thought it would be. Dark Wolf was such a great decision because it took that away from all of us. It made us all go in with an open slate, open mind, and they could just take us wherever they wanted to take us, and they took us to amazing places. Episode 1, when we're on that bridge, we're doing the hostage exchange. I was like, holy, we're doing this. We're making a war movie. And it honestly felt like we were watching a massive Hollywood production war movie about Iraq. And we're in Mosul, and we're in Mosul the whole time. Not to mention, we talked about the people. You're getting the Iraqis right. You're getting the people who helped us, who aided us. And they're some of the best characters on screen.
Yeah, episode 1 hit hard right out of the gate. I've been saying it's my favorite military movie is episode 1 of
I
Dark
wouldn't
Wolf.
disagree.
You have these major action pieces on a bridge. You have this really heart-wrenching moment multiple times actually throughout the first episode that link you to this character, link you to Ben, and you really feel for him when he loses Duran and when he's in the end of the episode and he finds Duran's family. And it's amazing how they can, just in the first episode, make you root for a character to do something that's wrong. And you're like, the whole time, you're just like, come on, Ben, do it, do it. No, what did you do?
Yeah. Uh, and that's another theme that comes up over and over in this genre is the gray zone. There's no moral right and wrong. There's no strict good bad. You have to sometimes, to find the good, go into the gray zone. You have to kind of touch the darkness, if you will. And I think Ben is such a complex character, and we didn't get enough of him in The Terminalist or in season 1. And, he's gone after that. And so the way Rafe can continue and all the Hastings can continue on, and we can have Katie, and she's going to be around. We know she's going to be around. And you have Vic Rodriguez, and he's going to pop up all the time. We were never going to get that with Ben Edwards. It was never going to come back unless there's some prequel, sequel book, prequel books written, which I don't expect. Jack is expanding the universe, but I don't think we'll ever get another book with Ben Edwards. Yet the way Taylor Kitsch played him, it just means everybody is hitting the right beats, making the right choices. From Chris Pratt, the head of the snake, right? He's up there leading this whole thing, and he was the one I heard who told Jack, like, what about the spinoff? What if we go do a Ben Edwards story? And it's just hitting all the right notes, and it's connecting with the soul of the series. And for being off page and being written by a lot of different people and voices in the writer's room, every single one of them respected what a Jack Carr story is and the heart and soul of a Jack Carr story. The veterans issues, the brotherhood, the motivations, the twists, right? I mean, I'm just thinking Cry Havoc because I just finished it. We're not talking spoilers today. The twist, each one of these books or stories has to have that major fallout where your heart drops because of some new information that's revealed. And the show pulled that off multiple times. I'm just thinking of Eliza, right? And her turn, her switch. So uh, thankfully, and I think more so than season one, I could watch this one and just be like, okay, we're on the right path. I ended season one. I was like, this was enjoyable. I liked the content. I mean, something like whether it's the torture scenes or getting to see the tomahawk and the shotgun raid going through the cartel village. Like, okay, all the action is Jack Carr, all the kills are Jack Carr. But I don't know if the storytelling and the emotions behind it are taking me as deep as Jack Carr does in his books. And season two did, or Dark Wolf did.
Yeah, one of the strongest points of the first season was Ben Edwards, and it's very different from the book, which is really interesting. And I think that's just Taylor Kitsch, and I've been saying that it's really a role that he deserves because his career didn't pan out probably how he would have wanted it to, but he finally like gets a huge action role where he can display some really heart-wrenching acting and story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where they take this.
Yeah. Another thing that we said on the pod, and I will absolutely stand by, Dark Wolf sets up True Believer better than the Terminalist season one set up True Believer. If we had to jump from the end of Terminalist season one TV show and all of a sudden start True Believer, the Hastings Ranch in Africa, you got to have, uh, well, we don't know how they're going to handle Freddie Strain, so not too sure about that one. But if we had to introduce all these new people from Rafe to Freddie and so many others without knowing really who they are in season one, it would have felt like such a shock. And then also James on the boat, with the tumor, how is he going to live? I feel like there would have been too many transition pieces for a TV only audience where the readers would have been able to put it together. We knew the characters, we knew what happens ultimately. We know he has to go on this path of redemption in Africa. But I think that would have been too much to sell a TV only audience on. The bridge, it would have been a bridge too far. Once you throw in Dark Wolf, it established the Hastings clan. It established Rafe and who he is. It established the split between Rafe and Ben, which means James and Rafe's relationship will kind of fill that gap. So I feel like there were so many connections that Dark Wolf is going to assist viewers on. The readers, I think, are going to come to the game ready and know what to expect in True Believer. I don't think Terminalist TV show season one watchers would have been satisfied jumping straight into True Believer. And to put Dark Wolf right in the middle, which isn't even chronologically in the middle of the two, yet it still tees up True Believer better than I think season one did, which all sorts of mental gymnastics there to make that make sense. But for anybody who follows the series, it completely makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's going to be very helpful, especially because there's going to be a huge vibe change of the series
Right.
since the first season was very dark and they had that psychological element.
Right.
And I expect True Believer will be a little bit lighter. The whole vibe won't be like just dark, even in the lighting. The entire first season was not even bright.
Sure.
Just in that one aspect. And then you have the story. He's dealing with tons of loss. And in Dark Wolf, it sets up Rafe and Mo and
Mo, right.
Landry.
Mo, exactly. And Landry, exactly. Those are all the other names I should have mentioned completely.
And
Oh,
you'll
wasn't Mo
see,
a standout? Wasn't he a standout as well?
yeah,
Oh,
man, in that last episode when he puts the bomb on top of that car, just the story he tells with his
the
eyes.
look. And he does
It's
that at the
amazing.
checkpoint as well. I think it's in episode one or two where he's passing the checkpoint and he's got to bribe the guard. That dude is one hell of an actor. And he's Mo. He's perfectly Mo.
Yeah, I think we'll get a lot more Mo in the cinematic
Sure.
universe than the literary universe. I think he deserves that
I think so.
because of what has been brought to that role. I think it'll be easier to understand what these characters are going to do in True Believer because you have seen them already in Dark Wolf,
Yeah.
and I think Landry will be one of those that you'll be like, okay, that makes sense.
If you try to throw in a goofball Landry out of the blue after season one of The Terminalist being so dark, so heavy, and you got to make that guy believable, like, I don't know how that's going to go over. But the fact that he had time in Dark Wolf to kind of establish who he is, the kind of nonsense that he's into, Yeah, if you tried to throw me a Landry and a Moe and a Wraith and just all of these storylines and throw Freddie Strain on top of that, it's just like you're asking too much of people. Like, what? This is not the season one I just watched. What's going on here? But Dark Wolf puts it all together. All the dominoes fell into place, and they still told a good story. It didn't even feel like they were just teeing it up. They actually had told a cohesive, comprehensive story. And so to do both things at once is just an absolute genius, top to bottom, from the writers, the producers, the directors, and the actors to pull it off completely. Now, can I ask you something? When we finish True Believer, whenever that may be, what do you think about a Savage Son movie?
I think that would be awesome. Just the idea of having a theatrical release, that would be amazing to see in a
Dude,
on a big screen. Man,
can you imagine some of those scenes, the hunting scenes on the big screen? I I mean, it's probably a pipe dream. I don't know how contracts work, Amazon Prime and whatever. Even streaming a movie would be a lot of fun. That story, I just think, lends itself so well to Act One, Act Two, Act Three of kind of a movie format. I no doubt they could pull it off. Hopefully, they get more episodes than Dark Wolf was allowed. That's probably one of my biggest criticisms of it. It felt rushed and it felt needlessly rushed just because of an episode cap. Where I don't think it would have been rushed based on the the talents of the people involved. It just seemed like an arbitrary, we have to tell it in this many episodes versus tell the story that needs to be told. Do you need 8? Do you need 10? Do you need 12? I prefer that to be the method. We've also learned with books, some authors are very serious about word count. Oh, I'm going to hit that 100,000 words. That's such a big deal. Or my publisher wants this one to be under whatever 110,000 words because of there's a lot in the publishing industry around psychology and attention spans and the modern mind and how technology and social media is shifting that. So there's deadlines. There's also word counts that become so important. And I think if you could just throw those things out the window and write as the story needs to be written, which is something that Jack has said he does. I write for the story. I don't write for particularly politically sensitive audience groups. I don't write for social media likes and clicks. And I think he gets all that fanfare because he's writing for the story. And the only things he's going to put on paper are what the story demands to make it the best story it can be. And I almost wish the shackles were off for the TV show as well. And so take Savage Son, look at it and go, what's the best way to portray this on camera? I don't know, man. I think like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie epic would be just so much fun.
I can already see it in my mind.
Dude,
That last fight in the snow, I'm just
completely.
dreaming of seeing that on a big screen.
That ogre when he comes up against the freaking ogre. Oh my god.
Yeah.
There's so much.
And I think we'll find out pretty soon if they can make that into a movie. I know Chris Pratt already has multiple movie contracts with Amazon, so
Okay.
I don't think it would be a huge jump. And I think now they do have much more creative control because the Terminal List has been such a huge success, even bigger than I think the studios were thinking it would be. When I went to the Cry Havoc book tour, he was saying that they're going to use a little bit of strategy in how they pitch new projects to Amazon, like how they're going to throw Cry Havoc with Dark Wolf season 2 so they can film at the same location, wherever that will be, and they could pitch it as they're going to save money for Amazon, but it's going to give fans more. And I kind of believe that the more we get, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm all here for it.
I think with streaming, that's basically the game right now is push content. So yeah, there was a delay with the writer's strike, right? Getting to this one. I don't know if there's any sort of delays with whatever budgets will look like moving forward, but I'm with you. As much content as they could push out. The one thing I will say is, and it doesn't seem to be Jack's ethos, but I mean, I don't know how that man is not spread too thin because he's talked about the next Targeted series, his nonfiction series. I know he has writing and research partners for that. We're talking about multiple TV shows in the pipeline. So whether you got to put together a pitch or put energy into that, True Believer, the filming has wrapped. So I'm sure that kind of is a nice weight off your shoulders. but we've got to be thinking the next installment in James Reese as well, because Cry Havoc, we're going to talk about it on our podcast. We'll have a long spoiler-filled chat about what we thought about that. But it really does leave me thinking, what comes after Red Sky Mourning? Like, I never realized how I would feel going more than a year without the next James Reese book. I want to give him time to do what he's got to do. I just didn't think I would feel like, well, the Tom Reese story was really amazing. This is a great book, as we're going to talk about. What's James up to?
Yeah.
I thought it would be okay to kind of take that break. And now I'm like, what's he doing? Or more importantly, I got to say, what's Alice up to? How do you handle Alice post Red Sky Mourning? Was she kind of dropped in Red Sky Mourning? I don't want to spoil too much. That's what our podcast is for. But I remember one question we asked is, what do you do with Alice next? Because it's one of those things you insert into a series that really changes the fabric. It changes the game. Kind of like if you write about a pandemic, right? Like, let's say you have some series where it is, consequential and, chronological. You're going on to the next thing, and this big thing just happened. You had a pandemic wipe out like 2/3 of the population. Like, what do you write in the next book? How do you handle that? So I am kind of like, Alice is out there. You can't just ignore it. So, yeah, I kind of want to know what's going on. I always want more James and Katie too. So
Jack Carr has done a very good job at balancing the power of Alice, because she could like be this trump card for every problem ever,
exactly.
and he's balanced that with sometimes Reese is not allowed or able to reach him, and now he needs a break from everything. It's kind of crazy because when I got to Red Sky Mourning, I'm like rooting for Reese to have this break from just chaos all around him.
I
And then
know.
we have to go a year or two without Reese. And every year when I get the new book, I'm like, I'm so excited to read this story. But then there's going to be a year till the next one. And I think from what I've heard, we're getting a separate fiction book that won't be in the same universe as Reese. And then we're getting another Reese book right after that.
Yeah, that's like I said, spreading yourself awfully thin. But if there's one man who could pull it off, it's Jack Carr. Yeah, I hear you on that trump card, and it was interesting in Red Sky Mourning. Like, okay, you have to have an underwater battle in a tunnel, so electronic signals or whatever can't get through. The other thing you could do, and guys, pure speculation here. Also on Thriller Pod, another thing we like, we like spoilers, but we also like speculation. So we often just riff on stuff that we want to see, kind of that fan service or fan fiction kind of stuff. So we come up with all sorts of crazy theories. But man, if Alice gets attacked physically, because we learned about when we go down and first meet her, um, it's not only the dead, is it? I forget.
In the blood, I
In the
think.
blood, in the blood. And we go down, we meet her, we hear about how it's so sensitive to vibrations and temperature switches and quantum. I do wonder if you can kind of have this get out of jail free card of there's a kinetic attack on her systems before she was able to kind of become redundant and hide herself elsewhere in the internet. And at the same time, our intelligence is saying no other country is at this level of technology. They haven't yet stolen our quantum secrets. So that could bide you some time of like, Alice's infrastructure is dead and no one else has it. So it's like, okay, well, now we got a few years without her. It's like Jarvis, like Jarvis is going to go hide somewhere else, and then pop up. But I wonder if they'll ever attack the facility. What would that look like? Because can you imagine the security to get onto that base? What was it? Is it Lackland? Is it out in Colorado where Alice is?
Lackland in San Antonio.
San Antonio. That's it. Yep. What?
Yeah, that
Oh,
would be
Colorado. Did he ever do anything with the
the.
Space Force out there? No, that's not this series.
I
All right.
think
That's another
in
one.
Colorado you just had Poe and the prison that he was in.
The Poe. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and oh man, I want to talk Cry Havoc spoilers because
Yeah.
there's a Poe drop. I was wondering if there was going to be more Poe in that one, but I don't want to say too much. But I will say Cry Havoc. Talking fan service, man, it wets the whistle of just everything if you're going back to tell a Tom Reese story with all the snippets we've had of Tom Reese through these books, whether it's the visions, the watch, the shotgun in the trunk, in the case. There's so many things about Tom Reese planted throughout the series, and this book really, really does a lot to tee them up and kind of land the plane on that and take you back and see it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm really fired up to talk Cry Havoc in a second here. I just have a few more questions I want to ask you.
sure.
Do you have a favorite Jack Carr book?
Good question. We've also done rankings on the pod, and every time we do our rankings, we say we reserve the right to change them at any time because we've also noticed that books age differently. And we're guilty of being prisoners of the moment. So sometimes a book comes out, we feel a certain way about it, but then after it settles, maybe we revisit it, maybe we think about it more, it goes up or down the rankings. So I can't remember how I ranked it last time we did it after Red Sky Mourning, but I most likely had Terminalist in the one spot still. I just think that book, I'm also an originalist. I very much put a lot of value on debut books and also my experience. The first time I read a character, if it hits, it hits. And so I really like that original debut jump onto the scene of a character when it works. So I really think I'd still put the Terminalist up there in the one spot.
Yeah, I go back and forth between the Terminalist and Savage Son.
Savage Son,
And
that's a crowd pleaser.
there is a book for every moment, though, so sometimes it does change drastically. What do you want to see in the future of the series, the TV series?
Well, I guess in the short term, True Believer, I go into things and I unfortunately, and I don't know if this is a good thing as a fan or not, but I do go into things saying like, I need this one thing to happen. So if I'm thinking True Believer, I basically need the Africa stuff to take the time to allow Reese to go on to the journey that he needs to go on. He's not going to get recruited by the CIA like that after what he's been through, and all of a sudden he's team player again. They can send him downrange and go out on missions, and he's happy go lucky do it for America. He's got to put in a lot of personal work. The government has to put in a lot of work to reel him back in. So I want to see that work be done in Africa. I want to see the team. I want to see them, the anti-poaching efforts. I want to spend time on the ranch, the Hastings Ranch.
From what I've heard, we might be getting a full episode of Reese on a boat and a full episode of Africa.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
And I think an hour would be perfect. If we can get a full hour, that would be amazing. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole series is when he's on the Hastings Ranch out there.
I agree,
Or
yeah.
preserve.
Yeah, and the same way, another hallmark of Jack Carr, it's done in Cry Havoc with Amu, of course. When you read that book, you'll know who I'm talking about. It needs to happen with the local guide. The local guide who leads the team that he really teaches a lot of lessons to, but also learns a lot of lessons from. And I think he gives them the knife. So there's a lot of talisman, those kind of like talismanic items being exchanged when you give the gifts of the watch and the compass. So I'd like to see that exchange happen. Then I actually am going to be okay with changes that might be made to the Ukraine storyline. I really wouldn't mind if you move away from that or you have it in another part of the world, as long as maybe I'm jumping the gun. I really do want to see a sniper shot. Wherever you place it, I don't care if it's Taiwan or wherever you want to go, whatever, some separatist movement. The sniper shot, particularly if they could pull it off from the cargo ship, was it intended for the president? I think something about a sniper scene at that scale, like it was in, where were they in Ukraine for that?
Odessa?
Odessa, yes, that Odessa op. So I think I want to see something like that. And long term, beyond True Believer, a Savage Son movie. I said it already. I mean, just like if we could do that, that'd be wild. And then even more long term, I think I would say post Savage Son, what do you do? I don't know if you necessarily have to go into the next book and the 9/11 stuff and the pandemic. Could you turn to the domestic front and tell a story? Sure. The most interesting thing about that book was probably what happens if the military turns on citizens and cities, claim they're doing it for the greater good to protect itself from this virus and everything. I don't know. You can do that with nuclear. You can do that with, what we're seeing with ICE and the protesters. There's so many ways you can do that to have this conflict of like American military on the domestic front need to be reeled in. But I don't think you need to stay on book after Savage Son. I think once you move away from Savage Son, you could branch out and storytell without being tied to one season, one book, one movie, one book, one. I think you can open it up, start blending books together. I think why not jump to In the Blood, have a sniper on sniper kind of show? That'd be fun. Honestly, go back in time. You talked about possibly filming some Vietnam stuff. why not do Tom Reese on screen season 2, season 3 sometime soon? I could be okay with that. So I think as long as you can get through Savage Son, sticking to book as best you can, respecting the source material, after that, the world's your oyster. Go for it.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's some moments that I definitely want to see from every book, but I think it might be wise to kind of do the devil's hand differently if you incorporate some elements and mix it into the next one, just because I don't think it landed like the other books did because we kind of lived it already.
Mm-hmm.
But it will be interesting to see what they do. And I think we're probably only 8 months away from seeing True Believer, which is not that long.
Wow, that'd be great. After the delay to get to Dark Wolf with the writer's strike, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I cannot wait. But I think I'm ready to jump in and talk about Cry Havoc. So everybody who's listening to this, go check out the No Limits Thriller podcast, and we're gonna discuss the latest from Jack Carr.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me on, TV.
Thank you for joining me.